The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed on the Nova Society are those of our guests and panel members and do not represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of any institution any member of the Nova Society is associated with. The material information presented on the Nova Society is for general information purposes only. Reproduction or dissemination for the purpose other than education is prohibited without express written consent of the Nova Society. We'd like to welcome everyone back to the Nova Society, and today our panel will continue our conversation about Mothers Against College Anti-Semitism. And Scott's going to give us a little bit of a history lesson as it relates to the concept of Zionism and where that concept comes from, and maybe some of the misconceptions people have about Zionism. And we're going to be talking about the necessity of college campuses being a platform for free thinking and free speech. So let's listen in. So let's do a little bit of education here, because a lot of times you hear the word Zionism. I mean, and Scott, you are probably far the biggest expert sitting here about what is the difference between Zionism and being Jewish. There is a difference. But what is, so in the context, so why is that Zionism? Why is that such a, I don't know, it's like calling all Germans Nazis for some reason. I mean, it's just, it's, and I think it's because people just don't understand what it means.
So, yeah.
So this is that education opportunity that we sometimes
and again,
come
like,
up
with. Where do you start? How many thousands of years do you want me to start back on to do this? Zionism.
Give me the high school version.
It's. I don't think it's helpful actually to give the high school version of it. There was the Jewish community formed in this area that is now known as Israel thousands of years ago. They actually did manage for about 1,000 years or so to have their own countries and self-rule, and like everywhere else at that time, people fought and allied themselves and had different countries, and then the same country, and then different countries, and then somebody would come through and conquer it, and they would have to leave, and their leadership was brought to that country, whether it was Babylon or whether it was Rome. The entire history of that region is caught up in the I think the difference between being at this point, well, at one point, pagan, right?
Right.
And I think we've discussed this, Mark, right? So forgive me, people.
No. I mean,
that back in those days, you acknowledged and honored other people's gods. Okay.
Right.
And you would go, hey, you worship Baal? What a great sky god you have. My god is the moon god, and she's beautiful, and but I like your god too. Your god's really good. And the Jews just didn't do that. They said, no, there's only one God, and it's the only God, and your gods don't mean anything. And so that's rude, among other things, right? and people don't like rudeness. And so the Greeks, who were very, very polite about other people's gods and things like that, really began the whole idea of not liking the Jews because of that particular thing. And then you got into, I mean, even before, I guess this all was happening, was this idea that these are a people unto themselves, and they're never going to be Egyptian.
Right.
They may live in Egypt, but they're never going to be Egyptian. And if Egypt should ever fight the Ethiopians, let's say, how do we, the Egyptians, know that the Jews are going to honor the fact that they're living in Egypt and be with us rather than fighting with our enemies against us? And that was, what starts the Haggadah and the whole Passover story. Lets them leave eventually, right? Kind of an interesting series of mishaps that happen to the Egyptian people that don't necessarily cause them to say, let's let the Jews go, until the killing of their firstborn male child comes along, and that's the thing that sets them loose. And as soon as they're gone, the Pharaoh changes his mind and he goes after them, and his army drowns in the Sea of Reeds, and they continue on and they wander the desert for 40 years until that slave mentality is gone and a new sort of wild desire to conquer mindset takes on, and they go into the promised land and retake it or take it for the first time, depending on how you look at it, and defeat the people who were living there and begin and call it their own country. And they live happily ever after until 586 BCE, when the Babylonians take over the entire region, and then they have to deal with them, and they're exiled and their temple is burned to the ground. And then they come back after the Persians take over Babylon, and then eventually there's the Alexandrian Greeks come in and they take over the territory for a while, which is where you get the Maccabees and the Hanukkah story. And then they kind of give way to the Romans, and then the Romans kick them out. And that lasts 2,000 years or so, right? Although there are Jewish communities living all over the Middle East, including in the land that is now Israel, they don't have any political power. The political power comes from Istanbul, as part of the Ottoman Empire. It is not a widely respected area for the Ottoman Turks in those 3 or 4 thousand years that they existed. And once the Ottoman Turks were finally vanquished at the end of World War I, the British and the French moved in and took over the territory, carved it up the way they wanted to, kind of sat there for a really long time, not really being resolved one way or another, until finally the Holocaust made people realize that the Jews need their own homeland, and modern day Zionism once again got them a state in 1947. In 1948, the UN recognized the state of Israel. The Arab armies did not. They attacked the country. They were defeated. That's the Nakba that just happened yesterday, actually, and there's been nothing but hilarity ever since. A lot of fighting. And one of the themes that I think continues in this conflict has been a steady thing, is the idea that their Palestinian leadership has poorly served the Palestinian people, and that and that the decisions that their leaders have made have led them to a very, very bad place, and that continues to be the case today, with the leadership of Hamas seemingly not understanding that the Israelis were going to fight back after October 7th, or if they knew, they certainly didn't care how many lives it was going to cost them on the Palestinian side. And your mind has to sort of get around that idea, right? What they were thinking, what they wanted, and what they still want, or what they now want. That may be different. But for the Israelis, it's fairly simple. They need to wipe out Hamas the same way we needed to wipe out Al Qaeda and ISIS, and the hatred that creates those movements will never die, will be back in one form or another, and under one name or flag or another, and that it's a constant effort that will last forever. The end. No.
And there's your history lesson of, and it really is. It's important to it truly is important to understand this stuff, and I do think that it's that it is a matter of just simply Americans not understanding. And I think that the greatest point made so far today was that Americans don't even understand their own history, or the history that they understand is watered down or more propaganda than it is anything else. Um, but back to this moms against college anti-Semitism. Again, there's some of the things on that they're doing with colleges. Santa Monica College, one of the professors framed a question on an assignment. What are your thoughts on the ongoing destruction and genocide by Israel in Palestine? Now, we could take great offense to that, the way that is worded. Absolutely. And there was a whole bunch of emails sent in by this group to the head of the university, and the president issued a statement saying the students have the right to take reasoned expression to concepts and theories presented in their classes. Again, the students can stand up and push back against that question. But this group from the outside, that's something totally different. Because, like Scott said, these colleges didn't come to get your kid to go there. And I would almost probably guarantee that of these 60,000 members, many of them probably don't even have people in the colleges. They have no, what I would call, skin in the game. An associate professor of history at University of Virginia said she received 950 MACA emails accusing her of using her authority, and I love this statement, to promote indoctrination. Everything now is we're indoctrinating everybody. After she canceled a class session in solidarity with a divestment walkout. So in other words, a professor of art history basically says, I'm canceling my class because there's going to be a divestment walkout. There's not going to be anybody here anyway. And she receives, all these emails basically saying that she's indoctrinating them. I don't understand how that connection is made. So again, this is one of those things where, a year ago we were talking about Moms for Liberty, who were trying to take all those books out of high schools and grade schools and libraries and everywhere else. Then it turned out that their founding members liked alternate sexual encounters, even though they were pounding on what great human beings they are. And what Scott's talking about too is, the idea of it almost also resonates with the concept of why the United States took almost 200 years to have a Catholic president. And one of the greatest fears of John F. Kennedy was, we're going to be controlled by the Pope. I'm an American.
Yeah, in 1960.
I'm a Roman Catholic. That doesn't mean I listen to the Pope on all things. I mean, I'm sorry. And every single president that has had communications, they generally call the Pope, even if they're not Catholic. Hey, he's a world leader. He has a huge following. Yes, you want to know what's on the man's mind. I mean, it's not a leap, but it's not ceding your power to the Pope. We can be supportive of Ukraine, but we don't have to be Ukrainians.
Well, let me ask. I know what you're going to say, but but somebody else that I know, one of my right-wing friends, says that Muslims can't hold higher office in America because they can't put their hand on a Bible and swear on a Bible. And I said, well, as somebody who probably wouldn't be swearing on the same Bible as you anyway, and I'm not sure how many of the people who have put their hands on the Bible and sworn on it actually believe with the teachings therein, but they're certainly willing to do it. That a Muslim president, should there ever be one, would have their own book that they would swear allegiance on, and that would be the equivalent of a Christian president in this country. This country is not supposed to be a Christian country. It's supposed to be a neutral country. We're not supposed to ask people when they come to America, what religion are you? That is not our business as a government. And that's what's wrong with with why the Supreme Court kept sending Trump back until he found a way to make it palatable for them to discriminate against people who were coming here from other countries. I think it ended up with 7, and they weren't all necessarily Muslim majority countries or something along those lines. I forget exactly, but we don't do that here. Like, that's not America.
Well, America is supposed to do that here.
America is a different kind of country. We don't have a crucifix on our flag the way that England, the United Kingdom, I should say, the Scandinavian countries, Greece, a whole bunch of other countries out there have crucifixes or crosses on their flags because they identify themselves as Christian nations. We don't do that. We've got stars in a blue field. We've got red and white stripes. There's nothing in this country that says anything about religion at all.
Other than you have to have a separation between the government and religion. I mean,
Right.
That's really the only real reference you've got. And you're right. Look how long it took the Pledge of Allegiance, which, to remind anybody listening, there's only 6 countries in the entire world that actually have a Pledge of Allegiance. And one of them is North Korea. The other one is China. So we're in great company there. We're in great company there. Other countries, Germany does not have one. Great Britain does not have one. I mean, they just don't have such things as this. And look how long it took the Pledge of Allegiance to have "under God" put in. It was added in the 20th century. It was added in the 20th century. It had existed.
1954.
1954. I mean, it was added in. And we have taken this attitude, and I go back to the Kennedy. I mean, all the people that were afraid of, oh my gosh, the Pope's going to be running the country. No, I mean, that's not how this is supposed to work. We're not even supposed to be thinking in those terms. And instead of, taking the oath of office on a Bible, I think they should take an oath of office on the Constitution. Instead, take the religion out of it. And the one that gets me is that the conservatives who are so hugely invested in this idea of religion in government. The conservative movement was begun in Germany. And one of the things those Germans said was, because they talked about religion, and they said, we cannot have it in the conservative movement because it's too divisive. It is far too divisive. It has no place here. And for some reason now, conservatives have taken that idea of religion and put it at the forefront. I mean, I'm surprised. Every time Trump touches the Bible, it doesn't burst into flames.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, it's also very weird when you see the president of the United States walk on stage and hump the flag. To me, that's just weird. That's just a weird visual. And people eat this stuff up.
No, if it's on their side, they eat it up. If Barack Obama had done that, they would have been against it.
Heck, Barack Obama wore that tan suit and they almost lost their minds.
Right. But imagine him going up on stage and hugging the American flag. They would have been all over that. Like, he's humping the American flag.
Pretty much. So I would think that this new group is pretty much just like Moms for Liberty in the sense of, and it has nothing to do with the mission that they have. It has to do with the methods that they're using. Moms for Liberty tried to get the books banned by pressuring government officials and pressuring poor librarians and pressuring school boards and this stuff. These people are doing the exact same thing, and they're doing it to colleges. They're doing it to professors, and they're using the same kind of wording, indoctrination. And I don't know. I mean, the three of us have been educators for quite some time. We don't try to indoctrinate anybody.
When I hear somebody say indoctrination, that is like, man, you are anti-educational because you are not interested in critical thinking, and you just want the exact opposite of what you're saying you want, and you don't even know that you want that.
Yeah.
I would be apt to laugh. I mean, the concept of my attempting to indoctrinate anybody is I'm so far from my thinking that I would probably just, my reaction would be to laugh first and ask what on earth would give the person that kind of impression, or make anyone think that I had that type of influence or authority or right or even concept in my own thinking. And again, I think it's transference, their or projection rather.
Mm-hmm.
And using whatever word they can to make a person feel threatened.
Yep. Well, one of the things she says in the article, and this is from Elizabeth Rand, I don't want to shut everybody down, but I want to shut down obvious anti-Semitism by her definition.
Yeah.
Now that's by her definition.
Yep. I love how people say, I didn't want to do this, but there's always the word but, and I get so tired of hearing a first part of a sentence and then the comma where people are pausing to take a breath. And I know the next word is going to be but. And I wish that a different word could be substituted, such as however, or in addition to, or something. Moreover, but it's always but. And I also I dislike the well, we're giving you $80,000 a year, so you better behave yourself. Yeah.
That
really
speaks volumes to me.
Yeah, I mean, she's every, what is she? The university's supranational mom that everybody is just going to say, "Oh yes, ma'am." I mean, the premise is, it's just ridiculous. Yeah, behave ourselves according to her edict. No, it's ridiculous. And unfortunately, as you say, with 60,000 followers, and I'm sure that a number are simply looking for ways to be part of a group and be part of a disruptive group, and who don't have children at all, don't have children in university, and simply want to get excited about something.
How about this? Mothers out there, there's an organization called Mothers Against Media Addiction. Go for that. Go join that one. You could do some real good work there.
Yeah.
Just stay out of this one.
Are there any groups where there's fathers against something? How come it's always mothers against? I understand Mothers Against Drunk Driving. That I understand.
And yeah, that's a great group. I get that one.
That one I understand.
Yeah, I get that one.
Yes.
But I don't know. I mean, fathers, I guess we I don't know. I guess we're just not bright enough, or so. I don't know why we're not.
It's like fathers against mothers against.
Yeah, fathers against mothers against.
And you just fill in the blank.
Yeah, really, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mothers Against Nuclear War. Yeah, I mean, it's
fathers against talking about stuff that you don't know anything about. So why don't you be quiet?
Exactly. Yeah, Fathers Against Stupidity.
Well,
Empty-headedness.
It's just another example of how these groups paint with a very wide brush.
Yeah.
It's all the same. I don't know if this woman's kid goes to the university, George Washington University. I have no idea. And if your comment is, well, if I spend $80,000, you got to behave. Well, just take your $80,000, go spend it someplace else.
Yeah, exactly.
There you go. Until you don't like them. Mm-hmm. Because you're going to find anti-Catholicism. You're going to find anti-Semitism. You're going to find racial discrimination. You're going to find all sorts of things in college campuses, no matter where you go. Mm-hmm. No matter what programs are there, no matter what safeguards are put into it. It is a huge population, and you cannot have a population that is not going to have elements of this kind of activity. The question is it activity that's truly disrupting anything? And I think, in many cases, this is one of those much ado. Is there anti-Semitism? Yes, absolutely. Should it be combated? No doubt about it. It's wrong. But just the way that this group is going about it from the outside to bring that pressure in is to me, I mean, I could see me getting an email at one of the courses that I teach, which is on social justice, and getting an email because something that I said that did not agree with a student, and they write to this group, and this group, has the attack. Now, personally, I'd welcome it. I'd say, bring it on.
Yeah. And remember, you've been nominated for president of the United States.
I was nominated for president of the United States by one student.
Exactly.
Yeah, but so I'm ahead in the race.
Yes.
But anyway, I mean, the bottom line is I would say bring it on. Bring it on, and let's have that discussion. You're not going to like it. You're really not going to like it. But I'm more than willing to have that discussion and push back on this kind of stuff. Because to me, I agree. There's so many things about anti-Semitism, and I agree a lot of it is interpretation. I believe that there is true anti-Semitism out there being married into a Jewish family. I've seen it firsthand. I have. I've seen it with my niece. I've seen it with my wife. It is out there. But I wish, I'm going to give a shout out to my bride on this one. She also does not interpret all those actions as it's automatically anti-Semitism. In many ways, she sees it as ignorance. And she takes it as that. And it's kind of funny, some of the things that she won't get offended by, that I get offended by for her. And she's like, they just don't understand. You don't make more of it than there is. Now, if a kid's getting beaten up, yeah, that's something totally different. Absolutely. If there's a swastika in the bathroom, absolutely.
Right. I mean, so again, it just seems like it's like kind of going like, this is going to be a little bizarre, maybe. Saying that you are in a group that's against gun violence. Well, it's pretty easy. Everybody's against gun violence, but are you against guns?
No.
That's a little bit more complicated because now we're into constitutional issues and things like that, And obviously, I am anti-Semitism, and I'm frankly disgusted by a lot of what I have seen, mostly on social media, I should say, and I deplore the ignorance of people. Okay, so we, circling back to that again, but at the same time, shutting down speakers. I don't think that's a good idea. I think that you get to vote with your feet. If a speaker shows up and you don't like them, then don't go. But don't stop it. Right? Don't make this an official thing. And again, these are organizations like this. It really kind of raises my hackles. I guess this one I just looked it up while we were talking, on Facebook, and it seems to be sincerely a group of Jewish mothers who want to protect their kids while they're away. I get that, okay, but you can't. You have to understand where you go too far and shut down free speech and so on as well. And I'm tired of this topic already. I can't wait. School, I know graduations are ongoing, and this thing should be over until the fall again when it picks up again, and hopefully the situation over there is resolved by that time.
And you're right. People do vote with their feet. At the recent Virginia Commonwealth University. The governor came to speak. As he began to speak, about 3/4 of the students got up and walked out.
Mm.
Yeah,
I mean,
Seinfeld spoke at Duke, and
Yep.
I think I saw footage of people getting up and walking out because he's Jewish, I guess. And again, like, hey, you don't want to attend your graduation because they invited Jerry Seinfeld of all people to be the keynote speaker. I know he said some things that upset people on the left about how political correctness has destroyed comedy. Okay, I'd go with that. We've discussed that before. I'm in agreement with him there. There are shows that we cherish, movies that we liked very much, that we thought were really funny, that would not get made in the current atmosphere. And that's,
Blazing Saddles.
And that's too bad. It really is. It is too bad. And people need to lighten up a little bit. But whatever.
Yeah, they do. Yeah. They do. Well, yeah. So there you have our thoughts on that group. And like Scott said, I have not checked out the group itself on Facebook. I'm just going by the article that I'm reading in the Chronicles of Higher Education. It's just some of the things that were said in that article immediately put me off. It was like, no, that you're doing the same thing Moms for Liberty did, just you're doing it from the opposite direction. And you're trying to limit free speech, and you're trying to limit free thought because it doesn't conform to what you want it to conform to.
And I think I mentioned this once before, that when I was in college, G. Gordon Liddy came to speak, and I went to see him, and I did not have a very good opinion of G. Gordon Liddy then or now. And I listened to what he had to say, and I disagreed with him. And I got up and I left at the end of it, and I said, "Thanks for coming. I appreciate it." It was only $1 or $2, so it didn't cost me much of anything. And I got to see another person's viewpoint that I disagree with. At the end of it, I still disagreed with. I thought he did a really good job of making his argument. He's good at what he does. He's a smart dude, but didn't convince me of it. No. And I'm not worried about him convincing anybody else to the point where I'm going to say, no, we shouldn't have this person speaking here. That's absurd to me.
That's fear.
The parents need to allow their children to go off and grow and become university students. And I realize that is very frightening in this type of a polarized environment, and with hate crimes and the possibility of hate crimes, and with the Hamas attack, and your child is off at university and you're not there, and you're worried about the safety of your child. I understand feeling terrified and loss of control, and trying to control the university, and trying to control what is being said and not said, and telling the people, well, they better behave themselves. And I mean, it's the not fun part of being a parent of a child who may be at risk. And you have to stop, I think, step up to the plate and keep your fears to yourself. That's part of being a parent.
Yeah, you open the door and let them out, and hope you've done your job as well as you could, and that they're going to be okay.
So that's all the time we have for today's episode. The Nova Society is a production of the Phoenix Research Institute. We'd like to thank our sponsor for this week's episode, the Phoenix Research Group, an independent research consortium offering social issue solutions to NGOs and international government agencies through multidisciplinary, nonpartisan, and unbiased research. We'd also like to thank our podcast partners, Buzzsprout, who hosts the Nova Society, Audacity, our editing partners, Podkite, who does all our analytics, iHeartRadio, where people get their music and podcasts, Apple iTunes, the largest source of music and podcasts on the internet, Spotify, the most popular source for the Nova Society. The Nova Society is available on all these and other quality platforms mentioned in our description. We'd like to thank our listeners. Without you, the Nova Society would not be possible. If you have a comment, a question, or would like to be a guest on the Nova Society, we can be reached at nova.society.podcast@gmail.com. always remember the power of society is knowledge. So for Dr. Scott Gershwer, Dr. Priscilla Hobbs, Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon, and all of us here at the Nova Society, I'm Dr. Mark Bound. Be well, and we hope to see you again next time.